Hey, what's up, everybody? Dustin back with another deck list video. For today, figured I would share my Kaalia of the Vast um, deck. So this one, obviously, the concept for this is to cheat out big stompy boys, big stompy angels, demons, and dragons, and just overwhelm the board. This deck does also contain some artifact and treasure token kind of win cons with like Revel and Riches, and whatever that other dragon is, not the Hellkite Tyrant, but yes, Hellkite Tyrant. Um, so yeah, so on top of just swinging for massive amounts of damage and putting together additional turns with like aggravated assault or additional combat phases with like aggravated assault. This deck also has the opportunity to create treasure tokens, and then if you control, I think, what is it with Hellkite Tyrant? It is if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game, and I think Rebel of Riches, if you have like 10 treasure tokens, you win the game or something like that. So we'll go into more details once we get to that step. But to start, so this deck has 35 lands. So we've got 5 basic swamps, I believe 5 basic mountains, and 6 basic plains for a total land count of 35. So this deck does have a high converted mana cost, average converted mana cost of like 3.75 or something. But that's because we have the opportunity to cheat things out with Kaalia the Vast's ability. So basically with Kaalia, we want to get her out quick. We want to give her haste by the time she comes out, because immediately once you cast her, you're a target. And so there's some protection in here to protect Kaalia as well. And we'll go through that, once we get there. But we'll get started with the non-basics. So we got Dragon Skull Summit, Inspiring Vantage, Radiant Summit, Sunbillow Verge, Sacred Foundry, Tainted Peak, Haunted Ridge, Smoldering Marsh. We have the Arid Mesa, Valakut Stoneforge. So that's the one that is in double-faced. So it's a battlefield tap, can tap for a red. Or you can have Valakut's Awakening, which put any number of cards from your hand to the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards +1. So a great opportunity if you are, your hand is looking pretty blah. You could discard your hand, put it to the bottom, and draw that many cards to maybe refresh your hand and try to pull something, maybe get something different to be able to cheat out with Kaalia if your hand's looking a little slim. Isolated Chapel, Battlefield Forge, the Painland, Terramorphic Expanse, Ash Barrens, Black Cleave Cliffs, Clifftop Retreat, Godless Shrine, Shattered Sanctum, and a Command Tower. So that wraps up the lands. Like I said, total of 35 lands. Ultimately, the goal with this deck is you're not going to be tapping all the lands to cast creatures. You're going to be tapping your lands to kind of support your board. And for maybe your smaller support creatures, and casting instants and sorceries and enchantments. But really, you want to get Kaalia out, protect her, and then just start swinging as much as you can to overwhelm the board. So we'll get started. We'll start with the instants, I guess, because they're right in front of me. So we have Untimely Malfunction, 1 in a red. Gives you 3 options. Choose 1, destroy target artifact, change the target of target spell or ability with a single target, or 1 or 2 target creatures can't block this turn. So this is great because it gives you some options. It's got artifact removal. You can essentially deflecting SWAT a target ability or spell, but also it 1 or 2 target creatures can't block this turn. So that can come really into effect, with a creature like Master of Cruelties, where, if it isn't blocked, a target opponent's life goes down to 1. You could attack with Master of Cruelties. Somebody says, they only have 2 creatures, and in response to them declaring blockers, you untimely malfunction, and now they can't block, their life's at 1. Return the favor, red with Spree. You can +1 to copy target instant spell, sorcery spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Choose new targets. You can +1 to change the target of target spell or ability with a single target, or you could do both and copy the target and change the target. So another cool card. Savage Beating, 3 red for an instant. Cast the spell only during your turn and only during combat. Choose 1, so either creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn, or untap all creatures you control after this phase. There is an additional combat phase. You can entwine it to cast both by tapping 1 and a red. So again, you get a big board. You give all your creatures double strike, and then you give them an additional combat phase, and they keep that double strike because it's double strike until end of turn. That can finish a game pretty quick if you have a big board state. And Kaalia could trigger twice that turn. Brought back, it's an instant white. Choose up to 2 target permanent cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. Return them to the battlefield tapped. So an opportunity where Kaalia and another creature get destroyed. You could cast Brought Back, put him back on the battlefield tapped, and avoid the command attacks. Maybe one of your big dragons or something gets destroyed. Brought Back and bring him back. Deflecting Swat, 2 and a red. Alternate casting cost if you control a commander. Cast it without paying its mana cost. Choose new targets for target spell or ability. Return to Dust, 2 white instant. Exile target artifact or enchantment. If you cast this during your main phase, you can exile up to 1 other target enchantment or artifact. So some great removal for those other pesky permanents that sometimes people don't really focus on putting removal for. That can be very helpful. Redirect Lightning, it's a new one from the Avatar set. So Redirect Lightning is a red. As an additional cost of this spell, pay 5 life or pay 2 colorless. Change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. So essentially Deflecting Swat. Power Word Kill for 1 in the black. Destroy target non-angel, non-demon, non-devil, non-dragon creature. This deck is, angels, demons, and dragons. So it gives you some. It's a cheap removal for your opponent. Swords to Plowshares, classic. For a white, exile target creature controller gains life equal to its power. Teferi's Protection, the Avatar foil one, for 2 and a white. Until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out, and you exile it after. So some protection for your board. Good old Terminate, black and a red, destroy target creature, can't be regenerated. Silence, this is the secret layer from Final Fantasy, so Porum's silence magic. Tap for a white, your opponents can't cast spells this turn. And finally, Flare of Fortitude, 2 white for an instant. You may sacrifice a non-token white creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost for its alternate casting cost. Until end of turn, your life total can't change, and permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible. So again, more protection for your board. Keep your things alive. Move to the sorceries. Reanimate. Tap for a black. Put target creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, whose life equal to its mana value. I have played games before where I have had to reanimate in a massive creature in my hand. I've purposefully discarded, not played a land that turn, just so that I would be forced to discard. Came back around, reanimated a huge, threat onto the battlefield like turn 2, and pretty much ran away with the game right off the bat because there was nothing they could do to catch up. Dark Writ, black, add 3 black to your mana pool. Faithless Looting, red, draw 2 cards and discard 2, has flashback for 2 and a red. Demonic Tutor, 1 in the black, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Exercise, 1 in a white, exile target artifact, enchantment, or creature with power 4 or greater. So some more a variety of removal. Hell to Pay, for X and a red. Hell to Pay deals X damage to target creature, and you create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the amount of excess damage dealt to that creature this way. So a great way to, again, with the treasure tokens and the artifact win conditions in this deck, let's say you have, I don't know, 15 treasure tokens or something, and you need 20, and you have a bunch of mana, tap red and tap for 6, X equals 6, and, deal 6 damage to a 1/1 creature, and now you've dealt 5 excess damage, so you create 5 more treasure tokens. Now you're, just an upkeep away from winning the game. And especially with, like Revel and Riches as an enchantment, not a lot of people play like enchantment removal. So, sometimes you can kind of get away with it. And good old Wrath of God, 2 white, destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. And what's cool about this deck is there's some, there's like Avacyn is in here, so it gives all of your creatures, and all your permanents indestructible. So you can wrath the board and keep your board just as it is. Move on to the artifacts. There's only 3 or 4 in this deck. A lot of focus is put on the creatures. That's the biggest stack, as you can tell. So start off with the Fire Crystal, 2 red for a legendary artifact. Red spells you cast cost 1 less, but it gives all your creatures haste. You can also tap 4 red and tap it to create a token that's a copy of target creature you control and sack it at the beginning of your next end step. Swiftfoot Boots for 2. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste, 1 cost for equip. So, put this out on the board. Cast Kaalia when you get 5 mana. Hope she resolves. Equip Swiftfoot Boots, and now she has hexproof and haste, and you can swing with her right off the bat. Arcane Signet and a Soul Ring. Go over to the enchantments now. We have Fervor. Jeez, it's a mouthful. Fervor. 2 in a red. Creatures you control have haste. It's an enchantment, so again, giving everything haste. This also helps for, let's say you have additional combat phases on your turn. The creature you put on the board on your first combat phase, they put them out when she attacks, the attack trigger, they come out, they're tapped and attacking, you untap everything. That creature has summoning sickness, so still you won't be able to attack your second round with that creature unless you have something giving everything haste. So, again, just a kind of a little synergy to, with multiple combat phases. Phyrexian Arena, 1 black at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card and lose 1 life. So some additional card drawn here. That was one thing when I originally built this deck, was that it struggled tremendously with card draw. Where Kaalia allows you to play things for free, I was finding myself, I would get Kaalia out, I'd keep her alive, and then I'd dump my hand out on the board, and then I would be drawing 1 card per turn, and I'd get flooded with lands, and I'd have nothing to increase my board state, and my opponents would catch up over 2 turns of, maybe having some extra card draw that I didn't have. So tried to put a little more card draw in here, because that was an area that, I was falling behind on. So again, black market connections, 2 and a black for an enchantment at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase. Choose 1 or more. So sell contraband, create a treasure token, lose a life. Buy information, card draw, lose 2 life. Hire a mercenary, create a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter, creature token with changeling, and you lose 3 life. Creating a treasure token, drawing a card, 3 life per turn to do that. It's pretty ideal. And let's say your board doesn't have much on it, you need some defenders, you pay 3 life and create the shapeshifter token. And still, it's only 6 life. You can get away with doing that 2 turns to help your board state, maybe get yourself some blockers, draw a card, continue to create treasure tokens to be able to cast big things or to progress towards your win condition. All Out Assault, 2 red, white, black. For an enchantment, creatures you control get +1/+1 and have death touch. However, when this enchantment enters, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase, followed by an additional main phase. When you next attack this turn, untap each creature you control. Additional combat phases, and it gives your creatures death touch, which is great. Aggravated Assault, 2 and a red, untap all creatures you control. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Activate only as a sorcery. Notice that Aggravated Assault does not require to be tapped. So you could potentially, if you have a bunch of treasure tokens and you don't have a Hellkite Tyrant out or Revel in Riches, you could continue to tap this, or continue to tap 5 and, have a bunch of combat phases. Just a cool card there. Revel in Riches, like I was talking about, 4 and a black for an enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you create a colorless treasure token artifact, or treasure artifact token with tap to sack this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Authority of Consoles, just some fun stacks. Creatures your opponent control enter tapped. Whenever a creature an opponent control enters, you gain a life. Kind of not a huge deal with the gaining life, but still it helps. And then Smothering Tithe, because of course, if we are going to have treasure token win conditions, Smothering Tithe is where it's at. 3 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If that player doesn't, you create a treasure token. All right, and lastly, to the biggest part of the deck, the creatures. Tariel, Reckoner of Souls, for 4 white, black, and a red. Flying in Vigilance, you can tap it to choose a creature card at random from a target opponent's graveyard. Put that card onto the battlefield under your control. Doesn't really have much synergy with this deck, but it's in here. Haven't really found anything. I want to replace it with the Ancient Copper Dragon, but I just haven't had $100 to throw down on one card. I could probably trade in quite a few and maybe pay a little bit of cash, but that's really the biggest thing I need to add to this deck would be the Ancient Copper Dragon. It would go well, obviously, with the treasure token win conditions. So that's probably the next, and I'd say close to, the biggest purchase for this deck that it would need is the Ancient Copper Dragon. And it would definitely replace this card. Esper Sentinel, so cast for a white. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell, each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. So some card draw. Archangel of Tides, 1 white for a 3/5 angel creature with flying. As long as Archangel of Tides is untapped, creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless they pay 1 for each of those creatures. And as long as it is attacking, creatures can't block unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. So again, a great way to get around, with a Master of Cruelties on the board or something. You see an opponent's tapped out, swing with your Archangel and, you can't with Master of Cruelties, that's right, but you could still swing without Master of Cruelties, swing with your, board, and the opponent can't block. Burning Rune Demon, 4 black for a 6/6 Demon Berserker with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for exactly 2 cards not named Burning Rune Demon that have different names. If you do, reveal those cards, and an opponent chooses one of them. One goes into your hand, the other goes into your graveyard, and then shuffle your library. So kind of give your opponents the opportunity to choose between which creature is going to pummel them or not. So pretty cool card. Just a way to go fetch some things, and you can grab 2 really big creatures. And say, all right, choose which lesser of the evils would you like. Moving on to Axgard Cavalry, 1 and a red. It's a 2/2 Dwarf Berserker. The whole point of this creature in here is you can tap it to give target creature haste until end of turn. So you can utilize him to give Kaalia haste, or another creature haste if you want them to attack. If you don't have anything else giving haste. It's pretty much the whole point of this thing other than a body. Drannith Magistrate, 1 and a white, 1/3 human wizard. Your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. Great way to piss off your pod. Can't cast their commanders. Or if you're playing against graveyard deck. Alright, Hellkite Tyrant for a 4 red for a 6/5 dragon with flying and trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. In the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. So again, remember your treasure tokens are considered artifacts, so those are included. So again, why it would be huge to have Ancient Copper Dragon, just more opportunities to win the game with the artifacts and treasure token, artifacts and treasures win conditions. Valgavoth, Terror Eater, 6 black for a 9/9 legendary elder demon with flying and lifelink. With ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. That's gross. If a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than its mana cost. You like something your opponent casted. Go ahead and play it with Valgavoth for your life total. It's pretty great. Avacyn, Angel of Hope, 5 white for an 8/8 angel, which states flying, vigilance, and indestructible, and it also gives your other permanents indestructible. Protect your entire board. Avacyn is gross, and this is the one from Innistrad. I actually pulled it out of a collector booster a while ago. Ariella, or is it Auroria? I don't know. I always mess up the pronunciation of this one. The Law Above, 3 red/white for a 4/4 legendary angel with flying, vigilance, and haste. Whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. And whenever a player attacks with 5 or more creatures, it deals 3 damage to each of your opponents, and you gain 3 life. So just some more potential for card draw. Remember that it's whenever a player, so you are included, or any of your opponents are also included in that, to get some card draw out of it. Karmic Guide, 3 white for a 2/2 Angel Spirit with flying and protection from black. It has Echo, 3 white, so at the beginning of your upkeep, if this came under your control since the beginning of your last upkeep, sack it unless you pay its Echo cost. The biggest reason for Karmic Guide is its recursion ability. So whenever it enters the battlefield, return target creature from the graveyard directly to the battlefield. So go ahead and, discard a big dog, or one of your big dogs dies, or Kaalia gets killed. You have this in your hand. Put her in the graveyard, cast Karmic Guide, and Kaalia comes out, free recursion from Karmic Guide. So its primary purpose in this deck is for its recursion. I don't think of any time that I would pay its Echo cost at the beginning of my upkeep. I would just let it go. I want this ability down here. Sunset Strike Master, 1 and a red for a 3/1 human monk. It's a mana dork, but it also, you can tap 2 and a red and tap to sack it and deal 6 damage to target creature with flying. So get rid of some of those defenders that your opponents may have that are flying. So, sack your mana dork. I don't know what's inside of this. Is that inside of the card? It's like crusties on the, I don't know what's on the outside. But yeah, this is actually, that ability has saved me in a game before. An opponent had, a really strong flyer that was preventing me from wanting to attack with Kaalia. I got rid of it and, overwhelmed the board at that point. Drana and Linvala, 1 white, black for a 3/4 legendary vampire angel with flying and haste. Activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated, and Drana and Linvala has all activated abilities of creatures your opponents control. Spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate those abilities, so lock up your opponent's abilities and steal them. Very fun for them. Aurelia, whatever, how you pronounce it, the war leader. Go ahead and shit on me in the comments about my pronunciation. 2 red, red, white, white for a 3/4 legendary angel with flying, vigilance, and haste. And whenever it attacks for the first time each turn, untap all those creatures you control. Untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So additional combat phases, additional opportunities for Kaalia to turn sideways and to throw another creature back onto the battlefield tapped for free. And it comes in with haste, so it can attack in that additional combat phase as well. Generous Plunderer, 1 and a red for a 2/2 human rogue with menace. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you may create a treasure token. When you do, target opponent creates a tapped treasure token. Whenever it attacks, it deals damage to defending player equal to the number of artifacts they control. Again, this creature is probably not going to be turned sideways to attack. We want the treasure tokens. And you can kind of use that to politic with your opponents and be like, hey, I'll give you a treasure token if you'll leave me alone next turn, or let me resolve this, or something like that. Safara, Sky's Blade, 4 white, white, white for a 7/7 legendary angel. You may pay white and tap 4 untapped creatures you control with flying rather than pay the spell's mana cost. So let's say Kaalia's not on the board, but you still get some flying dogs out there. You want to get Safara out on the battlefield to give, for its ability to give other creatures you control with flying indestructible. Go ahead and pay that alternate casting cost. Safara also has flying and lifelink, so huge 7/7 body. And it also gives your flyers indestructible, which a good majority of the creatures in this deck are angels and dragons, who are all flyers. And some of your demons are flyers as well. Jesla or Gisla, Blade of Gold Knight. Again, shit on me in pronunciation if you want. 4 red, white, white for a 5/5 legendary angel with flying and first strike. If a source would deal damage to an opponent or permanent that opponent controls, double that damage to that player or permanent instead. If a source would deal damage to you or a permanent you control, prevent half of that damage rounded up. So double damage to your opponent and their permanents or creatures, half the damage dealt to you. Lord of the Void, 4 black, black, black for a 7/7 demon with flying. When it enters, or whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 7 cards of that player's library and then put a creature card from among them on the battlefield under your control. Go ahead and steal your opponent's shit after you whack them in the face. I'm sure they'll love you for it. Dracuseth Mob Flames, 4 black, black, black for a 7/7 legendary dragon with flying. When it attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target and 3 damage to each of up to 2 other targets. So when it attacks, deal damage to a bunch of creatures before blockers are even assigned. Harvester of Souls, 4 black, black for a 5/5 demon with Death Touch. Whenever another non-token creature dies, you may draw a card. So remember, that is another non-token creature, so not anything you control. Any creatures on the battlefield die, get some card draw. And you may, so let's say you, for whatever reason, don't want to draw a card. It's a may option. Vexilus Praetor, 3 and a white for a 3/4 warrior. I don't know what that Custodes. I'm not familiar with 40k so for Warhammer, so I'm sorry. It has Flash and Vigilance. It also has Aegis of the Empire. Commanders you control have protection from everything. Give Kaalia some protection with the boy here. I know there's a lot of duplicate protection in here, giving things indestructible and everything, but like I said before, it's really important that Kaalia is protected, because the moment she hits the battlefield, people are gonna target you. If they even let Kaalia resolve, honestly. You want to watch out for your blue players, because they're not going to let her resolve if they can. And your black players and white players are going to look to swords or anything like that and get rid of her as quick as they can. Basically, you don't want to cast Kaalia if you can't get her to swing the turn she enters the battlefield, in my opinion. That's why I've tried to build this deck with multiple things giving everything haste. Runescarred Demon, 5 black for a 6/6 demon with flying. When this creature enters, search your library for a card, put it in your hand and shuffle. So enters and it basically tutors for any card you want, put it in your hand and shuffle. Grand Abolisher, white for a 2/2 human clerk. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. So protect your board during your turn with Grand Abolisher. Another good one to get in your opening hand, get it out on the battlefield. Hope nobody removes it, and protect Kaalia for when she comes into the battlefield, and hopefully give her haste, and you can start, dumping things onto the battlefield. Narev, Heart of the Storm, 1 red, white, black for a 4/5 legendary spirit dragon with flying. If a creature you control that entered this turn would deal damage, it deals twice that much damage instead. So again, this is out on the battlefield. Kaalia turns sideways. You play Runescarred Demon. It's going to deal double that damage instead because it just entered the battlefield this turn. So that will resolve that doubling on Kaalia's tap and throw the creature on the battlefield. It does work. Because the creature's already on the battlefield, so it sees it enter, and then damage is assigned. I'm pretty sure. If I'm wrong, let me know, but I'm pretty sure that's how that resolves. Master of Cruelties, we were talking about that one earlier. 3 black-red for a 1/4 demon with first strike and death touch. It can only attack alone, and whenever it attacks a player and isn't blocked, that player's life total becomes 1. Master of Cruelties assigns no combat damage this combat. So get this out on the battlefield. I do not think, because it attacks a player alone and isn't blocked, I don't know how it resolves coming on the battlefield with Kaalia. If it hits, if it would, make the player's life total become 1 or not. Somebody said no, because it needs to have its attack. It needs to actually, announce as a declare as an attacker. I could be wrong though. I'm not totally sure. That actually would be, something I'd have to look up. Battle Angels of Tyr, 2 white for a 4/4 Angel Knight with flying in Myriad. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card if that player has more cards in hand than each other player. Then you create a treasure token if that player controls more lands than each other player. And then you gain 3 life if that player has more life than each other player. So when you go to attack, how many cards you got in hand? How many lands do you have? Take advantage of the card draw, the treasure token creation if they have more lands. The life gain's obviously pretty minimal in Commander, but anything helps, right? Lightning Low Commando, which is actually Ishin 2 Heavens is 1 for a red, white, and black 3/4 legendary human samurai. If a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So yes, the whole point of this card is so that when she attacks, it triggers twice. You can put 2 angel, demons, or dragons onto the battlefield. I guess Drakuseth would trigger twice as well. Not a lot of attack triggers in this deck, I don't think. No, but I mean, still, its sole purpose is to be able to dump, is for Kaalia's trigger to resolve twice. Goldspan Dragon, this is gross in this deck. 3 red for a 4/4 dragon with flying and haste. Whenever it attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token. Treasures you control have tapped to sack this artifact and add 2 mana of any one color. So double up your treasure tokens. Yuck. Lisa, Forgotten Archangel, 2 white, and a black for a 4/5 legendary angel with flying and lifelink. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. And if a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. So, you know, a little bit of graveyard hate for your opponents who like to kind of sack their creatures and put them in the graveyard. And no, that's going to exile instead. Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, 5 black for an 8/8 legendary demon with flying and trample. It also has pay 2 life, sack another creature, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, and shuffle. So a recurring tutor with Dracuseth as long as you have creatures on the board. As you saw, you know, we have some small mana dorks. We have the Axeguard Cavalry that once you get Kaalia on the battlefield, you really don't care about giving anything haste anymore. So some more sacrifice fodder for Razaketh the Foul-Blooded. Abyssal Harvester, 1 black for a 3/2 Demon Warlock with tap, exile target creature from a graveyard that was put there this turn. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. Then exile all other nightmare tokens you control. So, you know, you can exile, let's say a creature goes to the battlefield, tap it, exile it, create a copy of it. It's just a nightmare in addition to its other types. And then if you had any other nightmares, you would exile them. And lastly, Balefire Dragon, which is disgusting. 5 red for a 6/6 dragon with flying that says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. You hit somebody with a 6/6 Balefire Dragon and it deals 6 damage to their creatures. Most of the time, that's probably a creature board wipe for them. Really disgusting card. And again, if you have something that gives multiple combat phases, and you swing with Balefire Dragon and you can get it to attack another, you could potentially, you know, take care of 2 players' entire board of creatures. Obviously, there are instances where somebody might have a 7/7 on the board or something a little bit, you know, higher, but you're still taking care of most likely a majority of the creatures on their battlefield. So that's it. Like I said, the only big change I plan to make is when I have enough trade fodder to get an Ancient Copper Dragon. That's going to replace this. I guess I could probably get, what's the black one? The Ancient Bronze Dragon? Is it the bronze one? Ancient Bronze. No, that one's for stuff in the graveyard. That'd probably go better in my Muldrotha deck actually. I thought there was one of the ancient dragons that would go good in here, but I think just the Ancient Copper Dragon would be the thing I'd be missing the most. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. If there's anything else you can think of that I should add into this deck. I think it's pretty souped up. It's considered a bracket 4 or whatever because it has 4 game changers with Smothering Tithe, Demonic Tutor, what are the other ones? Dranith and Teferi's Protection. So it is considered bracket 4, which, I mean, honestly, according to that logic, most of my decks are considered bracket 4. I think Muldrotha, I purposefully only have 3 game changers in it so that it's playable without having to make any adjustments to it when I go to my local Friday Night Magic. But otherwise, most of my decks, contain 4 or more game changers in them. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Said I was going to do this deck a while ago. I did the video and then I never posted it. So here it is. Let me know your guys' thoughts. And yeah, thanks for checking out my channel and have a great day.